Hey guys, tonight we wake up not in a cozy bed, but on a straw mattress, crawling with mites. There's a low mist outside, the kind that clings to your ankles and seeps into your bones. You hear the cluck of chickens, the thump of hooves in mud, and the creak of a wooden cart outside your windowless hut. There's no such thing as silence here, just layers of sound, worn smooth over the centuries. You stretch, groan, and remember you're a peasant in feudal England, and you probably won't survive this. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're listening from and what time it is over there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're born into a life already spoken for. Long before you can walk, your place in the world has been written like a verse in a song you didn't ask to hear. The patch of land your family toils on, it's not yours, it belongs to your Lord, who might not even live nearby. He answers to a greater Lord, who in turn serves a king, all held together by the invisible thread of fealty. You at the very bottom are tied by both duty and fear. Your village, if it can even be called that, is just a smattering of huts tucked beside a dirt path. There's no signpost, no privacy, and no such thing as locking a door. Because, well, there are no doors, just hanging cloth or crude shutters if you're lucky. The rhythm of life isn't dictated by clocks. They haven't made their way into common hands yet. No, your schedule follows the sun. You rise with it, work by it, sleep shortly after it sinks. In winter, that gives you a brief day. In summer, an exhausting one. Candlelight is a luxury, reserved for churches and castles. You make do with tallow lamps that stink and sputter. Outside your hut are narrow trench channels waist away from the center of the village. Though away is generous, it just sort of pools somewhere less visible. The smells are inescapable: animal dung, human waste, wet straw, and a vague hint of moldy turnips. And yet, you know your neighbors intimately. The sounds of their quarrels, their coughs, even the rhythm of their footsteps across the trodden earth. Privacy is a foreign concept. If your family owns a pig, it might be sleeping right beside you. Livestock shares your living space, one part necessity, one part warmth. But no matter how humble your hut, it's not entirely yours. Technically, it's part of the manor estate, just like your tools, your ox, and even your ability to marry. Every major decision in your life needs approval from your Lord. Want to marry someone from the next village over? Better ask. Want to leave the land and find work elsewhere? Forget it, you're bound to this spot. Historians still argue whether peasants had any real sense of ownership or autonomy. Some evidence suggests they found small freedoms in communal customs, village festivals, informal justice systems, but even those were overseen by someone of higher status. Your Lord's steward might stop by any day, riding a tired horse, holding a scroll that names you among those who owe more labor this month. It's called corvée, unpaid work, harvesting the Lord's grain, digging ditches, repairing roads. You can't say no. And if your Lord calls you to serve in his military levy, you go. Even if you've never held a sword, even if you're needed at home to reap your own barley, it's all part of the contract you never signed. Still, you're not entirely without hope. There's the village green, a patchy stretch of land where children chase one another and old women spin stories of saints and sea monsters. There's the church, its bell tolling the Angelus morning and night, pulling your thoughts toward heaven, or at least away from the muddy earth beneath your feet. And there's the dream, however faint, that your children might one day have it easier. Maybe they'll become reeves or millers. Maybe they'll learn their letters. Maybe they'll survive to old age, which for you means anything past 40. You fall into the same rhythms your grandparents knew. Wake early, feed the animals, patch the thatch, tend your strip of land, kneel before your priest, dodge the tax collector. Repeat. Time moves in seasons, not seconds. Your life's a loop, not a ladder. Still, something stirs deep in your chest every now and then. Perhaps a strange longing when a peddler tells tales of cities with stone walls and inns with roaring fires. or when a traveling monk describes the Holy Land in golden detail. The world, it seems, is vast beyond the fields you've ploughed, but for now, you are rooted. One odd thing, you know very little of the king. He's more a story than a ruler. A faraway figure you'll likely never see. Taxes are collected in his name. Wars fought under his banner. But he doesn't touch your life the way your local priest, blacksmith, or reeve does. Still, you mumble a prayer for him each week, because if the king dies, or worse, if the throne changes hands, your village might find itself burned in some noble feud you barely understand. You don't think of yourself as a victim, though. Not most days. This is simply the world. It's not cruel, on purpose. It just is. The thatch leaks, the fields flood, the Lord takes his due, and the rest of life, if you're lucky, is a warm bowl of pottage shared with family at dusk. You fall asleep to the murmur of wind through broken shutters, the lowing of cows, and your wife's even breathing beside you. You dream, not of riches, but of an extra loaf of bread, a dry winter, a good harvest, a world just slightly less hard. The sun's barely crested the trees when you rise, groggy, stiff, and sore, from the itchy straw that passes for your bed. No feather pillows, no soft blankets, only a rough woven piece of wool, still smelling faintly of sheep and last week's stew. You rub your eyes with a cracked, dry hand and swing your legs down onto the cold, packed dirt floor. Breakfast is not a moment of joy, just a tough chunk of yesterday's rye bread, hard as leather, dipped in weak ale that tastes more like sour oats than anything intoxicating. Water. That's not safe. The stream near your village serves the animals, sometimes even the dead. So yes, you drink ale. Even the children do. You chew slowly, savoring the rare grainy texture. Most of your meals taste the same earthy bland, and if you're lucky, just filling enough. Salt is precious, sugar is a legend, and spices, those are for kings and merchants. Your diet is what scholars call pottage-based. A bubbling pot filled with beans, onions, maybe a turnip or two. It lives on the hearth, replenished daily with whatever you can find. Some days it tastes like soup, other days more like regret. The bread you eat, it's coarse, grey, made from poorly ground flour that often hides bits of grit, or even ground stones. Over time, that grit wears your teeth to the gums. Dental care isn't a thing. By 30, you're more gum than grin. But there's no time to linger. You've got work to do always. The fields won't till themselves. And your Lord, he won't lift a single finger. If you're lucky, you have a wooden plow and a single ox. If not, you share with neighbors, taking turns by some silent code of survival. You trudge out to your narrow strip of land, awkward and uneven, assigned long ago during some village reshuffle. And you begin, digging, weeding, praying for rain, or sun, or anything but another pest infestation. The air is sharp in spring, and suffocating in summer. You sweat in linen that never quite dries. Your skin burns under the open sky. No gloves, no boots, only blistered hands and bruised toes. But you keep going, because stopping means hunger, and hunger means death. Even your tools aren't truly yours. That scythe issued by the manor, if it breaks you, replace it at your expense. Every nail, every rope, every borrowed cart has an invisible price tag. You don't own, you borrow. Existence. Now and then you look up from your furrows, a steward on horseback, surveying the land as if he not the sun brought the barley to life. He nods once sternly. You bow your head, not out of respect, but habit. You don't know his name. He doesn't know yours. Historians still argue, did peasants find meaning in this grind, or just endure it? Some say there was quiet satisfaction in the rhythm of the seasons. Others believe labor left little room for hope. Still, moments of humor glimmer through the dirt. A neighbor slips in the mud and swears loud enough to scandalize the priest. The village fool sings a ridiculous rhyme about a chicken and a holy man. You laugh, not because it's funny, but because laughter, even a feather's worth, makes the day lighter. Around midday, you return to your hut for a second bite. More bread, some pottage, maybe a sliver of cheese if your bartering was good this week. Meat only on feast days, or if something dies suddenly. Even then, your lord gets the best cuts. You chew slowly, lean against the wall, and let the warmth settle in your belly before heading back out. By the time the sun tilts westward, your limbs feel 10 years older. Your brow drips sweat into sleeves already crusted with salt and soil. Your stomach already wonders what's for supper. Probably pottage again. But don't picture this as some peaceful countryside dream. It's noisy. Dogs bark, children cry, geese scream like tiny demons, and your back. It's on fire. There's always a blister, a splinter, or a tendon ready to quit. Sometimes the miller cheats your grain weight. You know it. He knows you know it. But you stay silent, because speaking out could mean fines, or worse, a summons to the manor court where justice often smells like extortion. And yet, amid the dirt and sweat, there's structure. You know where you stand. You know what's expected. In a world full of war, famine, and plague, routine becomes a kind of comfort. Misery, after all, loves structure. In the evening, you stagger home, clothes sticking to your skin, limbs sore and slow. You drop down beside your family. Dinner is what's left. Conversation quiet murmurs about the weather, the harvest, and that broken cart that's still broken. You might mend a net, patch a tunic, carve a spoon by the fire, or maybe just sit. Let your muscles cool, your mind empty, your spirit float. A child climbs into your lap. The hearth crackles. The world softens just a little. Then without ceremony, you lie back on the straw once more. Another day done. Another 100 just like it ahead. And strangely, that's not the worst thought. You're alive. You worked. You fed your family. And in the brutal, back-breaking, bone-crunching world of feudal life that is what passes for a good day, your lord doesn't just own your land. He owns your peace of mind too. The manor, even if it's just a large timber hall surrounded by hedgerows, looms in your thoughts. You rarely see the baron himself, only on wedding days, judgment days, or heaven forbid tax days. But even in his absence, his authority presses down on you like a hand on your shoulder. You don't farm the land, you borrow it under pain of punishment. You don't harvest for profit, you harvest to avoid fines. And marriage. That's not always about love, not unless you have permission. The rule is simple. Everything flows downward. The king gives land to nobles in exchange for loyalty. Nobles grant slices of that land to lords beneath them. And at the very bottom, so far down it barely counts, there's you. Not even a rung on the ladder. Just mud splashed on someone else's boots. So what is a lord really? He's a landlord, a judge, a military recruiter, and sometimes an amateur priest. If he's generous, you might get a sack of grain after a hard frost. If he's cruel or just bored, you might lose a week's income over a broken tool. Or worse, an insult you never meant. Justice. It's whatever he says it is. Say, you're caught stealing a chicken. The steward drags you to the open-air court. No jury, no laws to quote. Just the baron, a wooden chair, and a mind that may or may not be in a forgiving mood. You stand trembling. The stolen chicken clucks beside you, and you pray he's recently had a good meal, or a pleasant dream. Punishments vary. Fines are common. Public shaming too. Stocks, pillories, a beating in front of everyone you know. And if the crime seems serious or simply offends the Lord's pride, you're sent to the dungeon. It's dark, it's cold, it's rat-filled, but worst of all, it's wet. Always wet. As if the earth itself were weeping for the people trapped beneath it. Historians still argue, were lords consistent in their rulings, or did they rule by whim? Some say there were codes, harsh but written. Others say justice was just a well-fed man's opinion, and it wasn't just law. Even marriage, your own, your daughters required his say-so. Want to marry someone from another village? Pay a fee. Want to marry a widow with a scrap of land? Another fee. Want to marry without his blessing? Don't. Just don't. And your daughter. She may dream of love, but if the Lord sees benefit or simply takes a fancy, he may arrange her match himself. Consent is optional. Sometimes, not even requested. There's even a word for it, Merchet. It's the price of marrying a daughter. A reminder that even love comes with a receipt. The father pays it, or the groom. Either way, there's a cost. And if the baron dies and his son takes the title, everything resets. New rents, new rules, old kindnesses revoked. You start again, hoping mercy is inherited along with the land. You don't speak freely around the manor. Gossip travels upward, and when it comes back down, it carries weight. Even a joke, a muttered line overheard by a child might bring the reeve to your door. The reeve, he's the enforcer. His face is always serious, his boots always dry. Despite all this, you cling to order, because without it, there's chaos, bandits, outlaws in the woods, rival lords burning villages to make a point. Your baron may be strict, but he offers something rare: protection, a palisade, a few armed men, maybe even a watchtower. And outside this system, it's worse, lawless, unpredictable, fast death, and painful. So you accept the system, learn its cracks, when to bow, when to be quiet, when to look busy but not too clever. Even kindness can be dangerous. The Lord compliments your ox, he might take it. He asks about your harvest, expect your rent to go up. Best to stay small and silent. Still, some find ways to rise. The miller trusted with grain, the reeve chosen from your own people, the priest's assistant learning to read. These people walk a fine line, close enough to power to feel its warmth, but also its bite. You wonder, will your children rise? Will your son serve the manor? Will your daughter tend to the lady's chamber smelling of rosemary and dreams from far away? More likely, they'll inherit your hut, your worn hands, your quiet fear of tax day. But still you hope, because even in this rigid, relentless world, hope slips in like moonlight through a cracked shutter. As night falls, the manor bells toll once, a reminder even the dark is scheduled. You look toward the hill, toward the hall where lamplight flickers behind closed shutters, and softly, you whisper, "May he sleep well tonight. May his dreams be sweet." Because tomorrow, your tomorrow depends on it. Your village isn't just where you live. It's your entire universe. A tight cluster of timbered homes all leaning slightly like tired old men. Thatched roofs sprouting weeds, smoke curling lazily from crooked chimneys. Chickens wander freely through the lanes. Dogs doze in the shade of ale barrels. And the smell, oh the smell. It's a heady mix of livestock, sweat, damp earth, and yesterday's dinner, reheated for the third time. It's not much, but it's yours. There are no street signs, no need for them. Everyone knows where old Hilda lives by the leaning tree. The blacksmith's forge rings out from the west end, and if you ever lose track of time, you just follow the church bell marking morning prayers, midday and curfew, with slow measured clangs. You don't travel far. Most people never do. The outside world is more rumor than reality. You've heard of London, of the sea, of the King's Court where everything sparkles and feasts go on for days. But you've also heard of plague carts, of witches burned in distant towns, of bandits who rob travelers and leave their bodies under hedges. So, you stay here. Your neighbors are your lifeline, and your audience. They know when you cough too much, when you miss morning chores. They know when your piglet dies or when your son sneaks bread from the communal oven. Nothing stays secret for long, and even less is forgiven quickly. Each morning you gather at the well, drawing icy water with squeaky pulleys and shared sighs. You trade gossip as easily as you trade eggs and herbs. The miller's new wife is too clean, someone says. The shepherd's boy talks to birds. And have you heard what the reeve did with the carpenter's daughter? It's not malice usually, it's survival. Information is currency. In a world with no newspapers, no mirrors, and no privacy, you share tools, bread, babysitting. When someone's roof leaks, others show up with ladders and straw. When a cow calves in the night, half the village turns out to help. But borrow too often, or give too little, and people remember. The alehouse is your only escape. A small low-ceilinged place where the air is thick with smoke and laughter. Benches sticky from decades of spilled drink. There's no menu, just ale. Maybe a turnip stew if the barkeep's in a good mood. Once in a while a traveling fiddler. Otherwise just coughing dice games and arguments about who cheated at last week's wrestling match. You don't drink to forget. You drink to pause, to breathe, to let the firelight soften the ache in your hands and the weight on your shoulders. Children run wild until sundown, chasing geese, chasing each other. They learn early that tears don't stop chores. They mimic your movements, your words, your weariness. You love them fiercely, even if you don't have the words to say it. A hand ruffling their hair, a crust shared at dinner, a whispered prayer as they fall asleep, and when they're old enough they help, gathering eggs, scaring birds from the barley, hauling water with arms too small for the buckets. Childhood is short, play is squeezed between responsibilities, but joy still sneaks in like dandelions through cracks in stone. Historians still debate, was village life quietly joyful or constantly hard? Some say it was all resilience and closeness. Others say it was nothing but endless toil. Perhaps the truth lives somewhere in between. Your home is a one-room cottage, wattle and daub walls, mud and sticks with dreams of grandeur. The floor is dirt, swept daily but never truly clean. You share it with your family, with your chickens, and sometimes a mouse you call Sachiki because he steals with such confidence. Your bed is a shared pile of straw, a rough blanket to pull close. In winter you huddle together. Body heat becomes currency. You worry about fire, about damp, about rats biting the baby's toes. But you also wake to the sound of your children breathing, to birdsong, to the bells far off but steady. And on Sundays you dress in your least-patched tunic and head to church. The church is more than prayer. It's the center of everything. Births, marriages, funerals, all pass through its wooden doors. You sit on hard benches listening to Latin you don't understand, but still you know the rhythm, the rise and fall of ritual. The scent of incense and melting beeswax, the priest's voice gentle yet distant like a lullaby you've heard since childhood. You might confess a small sin, a harsh word, a broken promise, but the bigger ones you keep those, like resenting the Lord, or sneaking extra grain from the tithe. You hope God understands. You hope He's too busy to notice. The church is also where news spreads. A royal birth, a war, a plague in a neighboring town. You listen with half-held breath, wondering how long it will be before the world knocks on your village gate. But for now, you return home, light a fire, boil water, settle beside your family. The walls creak in the wind. An owl hoots soft and low. You close your eyes, hands still dirty, heart still steady. This is your village. This is your life. Small, shared, sheltered, and somehow, despite everything, still filled with moments of peace. Morning starts, before the sun. You stir on your scratchy bed of straw, stiff and sore. The fire's gone cold. The room is dark but not silent. Someone snores. A chicken clucks softly in a corner, and the wind it slips gently through the thatch above your head. Your breath fogs in the chill air as you rise, careful not to wake the little ones curled beside you. Your day begins with your body, aching knees, a dull back, calloused feet hitting the packed earth floor. No time to complain. You have work. You always have work. Outside, the sky is still deep blue, just brushing toward grey. A few others are up too. Pale faces peek out of cottage doors. A shared nod, a muttered greeting, then off each to their own patch of survival. Today's a field day. You walk toward the narrow strip of land assigned to your family. It's wedged between your neighbor's plots like pieces in a scattered quilt. The open field system, they call it now. But back then, it's just how things were. No fences, no hedges, just long stripes of land passed down by memory, divided by tradition. You hitch your old ox to the plow. He's slow getting slower, but he knows the rhythm better than you do. The wooden plow creaks, groaning as it breaks the crusted soil. Back and forth, over and over. By noon your arms are rubber. By evening they burn like fire. The soil isn't kind. Heavy clay in some parts, dry dust in others. You learn its moods just like you've learned your wife's silences and your children's laughter. You know which furrows hold water, which corners hide stones. You grow barley mostly, maybe rye, wheat if you're lucky and the weather plays nice. And then, there's the weather. Rain can save you, or ruin you. Too much and your seed rots. Too little and nothing grows. Hail can destroy an entire season's labor in a heartbeat. You stare at the sky like it owes you answers, but it never speaks, just gives, or doesn't. You plant in the spring, you pray in the summer, you harvest in the fall, and you suffer in the winter. Winter is the cruelest season. Little grows, nothing warms. You patch the roof with frozen fingers. You burn dung when the firewood runs out. You stretch turnips like they're gold coins, counting each one with care. When someone dies in winter, they often die quietly. Just gone by morning. You survive because you must, and because your ancestors did. And now you teach your children how to survive too. Not just how to farm, but how to endure. Your tools are few. A sickle, a hoe, a dull knife. Metal is precious. Most of your tools are wood and will, and when something breaks, you fix it, or you go without. And yet, there's rhythm in the labor, a strange comfort. You may not control the harvest, but you control your hands, your pace, your presence. Some days you even find peace in it. The seasons are your calendar. The sun is your clock. You rise with it, and sleep shortly after it sinks. Historians still argue, did peasants work fewer hours than modern folk? There were holy days, seasonal breaks, yes. But when you did work, it was relentless, long, physical, without escape. You didn't clock out, you just collapsed. You don't work alone though. Your spouse helps between the hearth and the children. Older kids join in chasing crows from the fields gathering stones. Even the youngest have their tasks carrying water, picking berries, collecting firewood from the forest edge. Meal times are quick and practical. Porridge in the morning, bread and onions at midday. Maybe a stew at night if you've snared a rabbit or bartered for a bone. Most of the bread is baked in the communal oven. You pay a fee to use it, a handful of grain or a few hours of labor. Try to bake at home and it's illegal. They say the fire spreads too easily, and the Lord, he doesn't like risks. Speaking of lords, you owe him labor, not just on your land but his. Certain days you leave your own field behind and report to the domain, the Lord's land. You weed, you dig, you haul stones, the same work only harder, because now you're being watched by the steward, by the reeve, by that sour-faced guard who never seems to blink. You do it because it's required. You do it because it's survival. Sometimes, the harvest is bad, not just for you, but for everyone. That's when famine comes. Silent, soft-footed, like a thief in the night. You tighten belts, you eat bark, boiled weeds, you pray for spring like a drowning man prays for air. Still you keep going. 1 year, a neighboring village lost half its people. Not to war, not to plague, just hunger. You remember the silence in their fields. Even the birds had left. You never forget. That fear lives quietly inside you. A whisper at the edge of each planting season. This could be the year. And yet, sometimes miracles happen. A rainy spell breaks just in time. A sick cow births a calf that lives. A traveler pays in silver instead of lies. And suddenly the balance tilts. You survive, maybe even thrive, for a little while. You walk home after a long day in the fields. Your legs ache, your eyes are heavy. The sun sets in a burst of red and gold. Smoke rises from chimneys like sleepy sighs. Children's laughter dances on the breeze. And for a moment, just a moment, you think this world, hard as it is, holds beauty too. Not the beauty of tapestries, or feasts, or finery, but the beauty of endurance, of hands in soil, of bread shared in silence, of being needed even if you're never celebrated. You crawl into bed beside your family. The straw creaks, the fire flickers low. Outside the stars blink down cold, constant distant. You close your eyes, and tomorrow, you do it all again. You don't own the land. Not really. You live on it. You work it. You bleed into it. You raise your children on it. You bury your dead in its quiet corners, marked only by a stone or a wooden cross shaped by your own hands. But the land itself, the soil beneath your feet, the barley you coax from the ground, the cottage you patch each spring with muddy straw, it all belongs to someone else, someone you've likely never spoken to directly. Your Lord, he lives in the manor house. It sits on the rise above your village like a hawk perched on a high branch, watching, always watching. The building is larger than any you've ever stepped inside. It has real glass in the windows, a tiled roof that doesn't leak when it rains, a heavy oak door with iron studs. To you it might as well be a castle, not the kind in storybooks, but one built from stone and silence. You've only been inside once, perhaps as a child. Your father had bowed his head low, pleaded softly for a few extra days to pay his tithe. You remember the floors, cold worn stone. You remember the scent, leather, damp fur, old wood polish, and you remember how no one smiled. The Lord himself, He's a strange figure, near but also far, present in every rule, every due, every field, and yet absent like a ghost whose shadow never quite leaves. He controls the land you till, the taxes you owe, the punishment you might face if something goes wrong. His word can pardon, or it can destroy. But you are not entirely without rights. You're a villain, not quite free, but not enslaved. Tied to the land, yes. Bound by duty, yes. But still, you can pass your plot to your children, so long as they pay the entry fee, so long as they work their share. Some villagers are freemen. They pay in coin instead of labor. They seem to have more freedom, more room to breathe. But coin doesn't feed you when the rains don't come. Titles won't keep you warm in winter. Historians today still debate the nature of the feudal world. Some say it was brutal. Others say it was a delicate system, flawed but functional. They never quite agree. You don't need books to tell you what your lord is like. He rarely visits the village, but when he does, you hear him before you see him. Hooves on the path, barking dogs, guards in shining mail, bright banners fluttering like painted wings. Children stare with wide eyes, adults lower theirs. You keep your hat in your hand and your mouth shut because you owe him more than a glance. You owe him labor, days in the planting season, days again during harvest, a portion of your grain, a fee to use the oven, a tax to grind your grain in the mill, even a toll to let your sheep graze in the pasture. And then there are the fines, always the fines. If your pig wanders too far, you pay. If your son skips his day on the domain, the Lord's land, you pay. If your daughter marries without permission, that's a fine too. Silver if you're lucky, extra labor if you're not. You sometimes laugh bitterly at the idea of rights. They say they're written on parchment. But here in your village, rights are whatever the steward says they are. The steward, he's the Lord's voice, a narrow-faced man with ink on his sleeves and a quill always behind one ear. He always knows who owes what, who missed their duty, who's behind on their grain. You avoid him when you can, like you'd avoid a hornet's nest. Worse than the steward is the reeve, a villager, one of your own, but raised above you, and for that reason, often crueler. He knows your family, your habits, your weak spots. He inspects your oxen, weighs your barley, marks your name when you're late. Being reeve is called an honor. Most call it a curse. Still, the system lumbers on. There is a court, held beneath a tree when the weather allows, or in the manor's outer hall when it rains. Disputes are settled here. Whispers become accusations. Accusations become punishments. A missing sickle, a boundary stone moved a few inches, a rumor of theft, a broken oath. The result, usually a fine, sometimes the stocks, rarely worse. But even if you win, you leave with a bitter taste. Still, even bitter justice is better than none. You dream sometimes of something else. You imagine a town. You picture yourself free, selling spoons, fixing pots, singing in a tavern. There's an old saying, town air makes you free. If you can live there a year and a day without being found, you're no longer bound to the land. But that is a story, a wish, because you have children, and a cow who knows your name, and a patch of barley that needs tending. Besides, most who run don't make it. Hunger finds them, or illness, or swords. The world outside may be wide, but it is not gentle. And so, you stay. You do what your father did, and what his father did. You bow when the Lord rides by. You pay your dues. You patch your walls. There's no rebellion in your blood, only fatigue, only a slow, steady rhythm of survival. But still, sometimes deep in your chest, something flickers. A quiet what if. What if your children could own their land? What if the harvest was truly yours? What if no man could fine you for being alive? You bury the thought, gently, like a seed, like a prayer, and then you pick up your hoe and go back to the fields, because tomorrow, the steward comes, and you'd rather not explain why one of your hens is missing. Sometimes it's not the rooster, not the sun, not your wife nudging you to stir the coals. It's the bell, the church bell, a deep, slow toll rolling across the village, like a wave that never rushes but still moves everything in its path. You pause, you listen, you count 6 chimes, dawn prayer. You don't always go, you're not expected to. Not every time, but on feast days, on holy days. Yes, Then you rise stiff and quiet and make your way across the chilled earth. Sometimes too, when the world feels especially hard, or when guilt tightens its grip, you walk toward the chapel anyway, a place of stone, of silence, of stories older than the trees. The church isn't just a building, it's a presence, it's rules, it's comfort, and sometimes it's fear. It watches what you eat, what you say, who you marry, when you confess. It tells you how to name your children, how to bury your dead, which days you must fast. And there are many. Lent alone stretches 40 days. No meat, no dairy, just you, your hunger, and the quiet hope that doing right might mean being spared. The priest is curious. He lives simply, yet better than most. His robes are clean, his home is warm, and during Mass he speaks in Latin. Not that anyone understands. Then he switches to words closer to your own for the sermon. You don't always follow, but his tone is serious, and the stories are grand. Noah's Ark, the burning bush, a man nailed to a cross, miracles, judgment, hope, dread. You've heard them all, and yet still you listen. Because maybe, if you kneel at the right moment, if you whisper your sins without flinching, if you listen hard enough, maybe your crop will grow. Maybe your child won't cough tonight. Maybe your back will hurt a little less come morning. Or maybe not. Historians will argue were peasants truly devout or just afraid of what might come after death. But you don't have the time to wonder. Life is short, and hell they say is long. Best to pray, just in case. Tithing isn't optional. 1/10 of your harvest, maybe more, goes to the church. The tithe barn is always watching. A looming shape of timber and shadow, smelling of damp grain and rot. You don't complain. Not out loud. It's just another obligation. Like the steward, like the domain, like the aching in your knees. Besides, the church gives too. When your baby is born, the priest is there. When your mother dies, he blesses her grave. When blight creeps in, when war edges close, when storms howl through the thatch, it's the church that leads the prayers. Sometimes they even give out bread. On feast days, the village gathers near the chapel. You wear your best tunic, the one with fewer holes. Music stirs the air. A flute, maybe a drum. Children run wild, like geese let loose from the pen. Laughter returns. If only for a day, you watch the priest, arms wide, eyes turned skyward, calling down God's favor like rain. You don't know if it works, but something stirs inside you. Hope, or just the echo of the bell. Your faith isn't made of gold, it's made of mud and wool, of worn boots and whispered names. You don't know much about saints, or relics, or the difference between a bishop and an abbot, but you believe that there is more to this life than barley, that someone hears your whisper when the fire burns low and your children sleep like stones. Sometimes in the deep of night you whisper to Mary, or to St. Cuthbert, or to no one at all. You ask for little, rain at the right time, warm bread, one more year with everyone still breathing, and if nothing changes, you whisper again tomorrow. The church calendar becomes your guide. Advent, Christmas, Epiphany, Lent, Easter, Pentecost, Saints' Days, each one arrives with a rhythm. Candles, colors, fasting, feasting, that rhythm. It soothes you because it means time is still moving. You're still here, still part of something wider, older, more eternal than hunger and debt and blisters. You've heard stories of distant places, Jerusalem, Rome, Compostela. Pilgrims pass through sometimes. They wear scallop shells, carry staffs, mutter blessings with blistered feet. You wonder what they're running from, or what they're hoping to find. Sometimes you envy them, not for their holiness, but for their motion, to walk without looking back, to not owe anyone your next breath, but you stay, because your pilgrimage is here, in this mud, this cottage, this field. You carry your cross, not as wood and nails, but as a plow, a bucket, a fevered child. Still, you dream of lighting a candle in a great cathedral, of hearing choirs echo beneath high stone arches, of touching a relic that might heal what no prayer has yet fixed. But then, a cry. Your daughter. She's burning with fever again. And just like that, you remember. Your cathedral is this room. Your altar, the hearth. Your prayer, a soft, broken whisper in the dark. Because here, faith isn't pageantry. It's survival. You don't wear a cross. You carry it. In your back. In your hands. In the weight of every single day. And again the bell tolls, but this time not for prayer, for death. Old Margaret. She slipped away like breath on glass. You help dig the grave. No coffin. Just earth and a prayer. The soil is soft. The wind kind. The priest murmurs Latin. And for once, it doesn't matter what the words mean. It matters that someone says them. You look to the sky, and you wonder when your time comes, will someone dig your grave just as gently, and you whisper, maybe, just maybe. God is kind. The seasons rule everything. Not the king, not the Lord, not even the church really. It's the tilt of the earth and the length of the days that dictate your every move. Spring means planting, summer weeding, autumn harvest, and winter means waiting, enduring, praying. Right now it's late autumn. The air bites at your fingers when you lift the last sack of barley. Your breath shows in front of you like smoke. You feel every muscle in your back, every ache in your knees, but you keep working because every grain counts. There's no room for error, no real buffer. If the harvest is poor, you go hungry. If the rains come too soon or the frost too early, there's no second chance. You've seen it happen. A neighbor's entire field lost to mold. Another's cabbages eaten by worms. Misery spreads like mist, slow and cold. So you store what you can. Salt the pork, dry the beans, stack the firewood. You patch the holes in your roof and stuff the cracks with straw. You check the latch on the chicken coop. Twice, maybe 3 times, because once winter sets in, it closes around you like a box. You stay close to the hearth. The house smells of smoke and old onions. Children sleep huddled like puppies under blankets shared and worn thin. You keep your hands busy mending, weaving, carving tools, counting time by the drip of melted snow and the creak of frozen beams. And yet, winter has its beauty. You listen to stories. Some remembered, some made up. You sip weak ale warmed near the fire. You watch snow fall like ash, soft and slow, covering everything in silence. A white blanket that hides the filth for a while, makes even the manure pile look clean. You count your food carefully. Every loaf, every dried apple, every pinch of salt. The family shares a single roasted turnip some nights. It's not enough, but it's something. You've learned to stretch hunger thin, like cloth over too many shoulders. Some winters, the hunger bites deeper. You remember one 5 years back, when a frost came in October, and the crop shriveled like old men. You boiled grass, chewed bark, ate whatever the dog wouldn't. Old Margaret lost 2 sons that year, and they weren't the only ones. Historians still argue about famines. Were they constant, rare? You know the answer. It depends on luck, on weather, and whether the rats find your granary before you do. But when spring returns, oh, it sings. You feel it first in your bones. A shift in the light, the birds daring a chirp. The way the mud softens even before the snow is fully gone. Your fingers itch for the hoe. Your eyes search for green shoots in the hedgerow. And suddenly you're alive again. You plow, you sow. You wipe your brow with a sleeve already stained with last year's labor. The air smells of damp earth, of manure, and something else, something clean. Hope, maybe. Your tools aren't great. A wooden plowshare, bound in iron if you're lucky. A scythe your grandfather might have used, but they work, barely. You hitch the oxen, slow gentle beasts, and guide them with steady hands. The furrows open like wounds in the earth, ready for seed. And that seed, oh, that's the gamble. You can't eat it, though you're tempted. You push it into the soil one handful at a time and trust the world to do its part. Rain, sun, no hail, no windstorm, no mice. It's a prayer with dirt under your nails. You grow wheat if you're lucky, barley more likely, rye and oats definitely. Peas and beans fill the gaps. Cabbages if you have a garden plot, and leeks always leeks. They last long and they taste like something, but bread is life, coarse, dark, heavy. A loaf baked once a week, sliced and reheated each day on the hearth. You scrape off the mold, you ignore the grit, you chew slowly. Bread fills the belly, if not the soul. You rarely eat meat, maybe some salted pork in winter, A chicken on feast days, fish if the stream's generous, eggs if you can keep the hens alive. Dairy is a blessing. Milk from the cow, cheese curdled with herbs, butter when there's enough cream to spare. But more often it's pottage, a bubbling stew of grains, onions, beans, and herbs. Whatever you have, a bit of bacon if you're lucky, served in a wooden bowl, eaten with a spoon. You carved yourself, hot, salty, filling. It doesn't taste like much, but it keeps you standing. And through it all, the land is your partner and your punishment. Some days it gives, other days it takes. You've cut your hand on frozen brambles, broken a toe on a buried stone, lost hours chasing a runaway pig, watched hail flatten your barley in under an hour. Still you rise each morning, because the soil is your inheritance, your cage, your chapel. You don't own it, but you belong to it. And in that strange, quiet way, it belongs to you too. When the harvest finally comes again, you weep a little. Not from joy, though there's some of that, but from relief. You survived. Again, you bind the sheaves, stack the hay, thank whatever saints might be listening, and pray that next year the weather is kind. Because in the end, your real Lord is not the man in the manor. It's the sky. The manor looms, always just out of reach. It isn't a castle, at least not the kind with drawbridges and towers, but it's bigger than any house in the village. 2 stories high, with a timber frame and glass windows, real glass, clear as frozen water. Its roof is tiled, not thatched. Its doors are made of oak. It smells of beeswax and baked bread, not manure. You've only been inside once. Your boots left marks on the floor, and the steward looked at you like you'd farted in church. You kept your eyes down, spoke only when asked, bowed so low your back hurt. But you remember the walls, tapestries of green forests and hunting scenes, silk so fine you thought it might melt to touch. And the fire, oh the fire, big as a bed, with logs thick as your leg. It made the whole room glow like summer. That's where the Lord lives. Or sometimes a steward, if the Lord is off at court, or riding with the king. The Lord doesn't speak to you often, maybe once a year, maybe not even that. You see him on feast days, dressed in velvet, his beard oiled and trimmed. He smells of something foreign, cinnamon perhaps, or clove. It makes you sneeze. He doesn't seem cruel, but he doesn't seem like he sees you either. You are one of his tenants, one of his people. He might not know your name, but he knows your labor, and that's enough. You owe him dues. Not just food, not just coin, but time. 1 week you're mending fences in his orchard, another carting hay to his stables, then digging ditches, gathering firewood, or rethatching his barn. It's called corvée, unpaid labor, part of your agreement for living on his land. You don't complain, at least not loudly, because the land is your life, and it's not just the fields you tend for him. There's the mill. The Lord owns the mill. Always. You can't grind your own grain, even if you have a hand quern. That's illegal. Instead, you haul your sacks of barley to his miller and pay the fee 1 in 10. The miller keeps his share, and the rest goes to the Lord. Same for the oven. You can bake in your own hearth. But the best bread, white, soft, special for feast days, is baked in the Lord's oven. For a price, everything costs something, and nothing is truly yours. Not even justice. Disputes are handled in the manorial court, usually held beneath an old oak tree, or in the village alehouse. The Lord or his bailiff sits in judgment. Chicken stolen, fences broken, debts unpaid. You might get fined, or shamed, or both. Whipping is rare, but not unheard of. And sometimes the punishments are strange. If your pigs root in another man's garden, you might have to carry a heavy stone through the village. If you gossip about the reeve, you might be made to kneel in the mud and apologize. Justice is not blind here. It squints in the direction of power. Still, the manor brings more than burdens. It brings safety. If raiders come, or if a fire breaks out, the Lord is expected to protect you. His men carry swords. His fences are tall. When the world turns violent, you huddle near his walls like sheep in a storm. And when the harvest is good, and the taxes are paid, and the church bells ring clear, sometimes the Lord throws a feast. You're invited, sort of. Not to sit at his table, of course, but to eat in the field, to drink ale stronger than your own, to dance to pipers, and watch jugglers toss fire like it's nothing. There's laughter, music, meat on the spit. You feel almost equal for an hour or two. Then the steward shouts, and you remember your place. Historians still argue were lords loved or loathed. Some say they were tyrants, feeding off peasant labor. Others say they were paternal protective, necessary. You think both might be true, because while the manor drains you, it also anchors you. It's the sun around which your little life orbits. There's gossip, of course, about the lord's daughter who ran off with a monk, about the steward's secret stash of wine, about the time the Lord himself cried at mass. You hear it all while shucking peas or sharpening blades. You never repeat it, but you remember. You've seen the manor change. 1 year a new chimney, the next a second barn, then a bigger hall. It grows slowly, like a tree fed by your sweat. You wonder what it's like to live there, to eat roast duck instead of dried peas, to have sheets, real sheets, not woolen wraps, to sleep without mice nesting in your walls. But those are dreams, and dreams are dangerous. Still, when you pass the manor at dusk and the windows glow amber with firelight, you can't help but linger. Just for a moment, you imagine stepping inside again. Not as a servant, but as a guest, a friend, someone whose name the Lord remembers. Then you blink, and the light fades, and you walk on toward your hut, toward your bed of straw, toward the life you know. Because here dreams are luxuries, and you already owe enough. The church bell tolls slow and solemn. Its deep sound rolls across the fields like morning mist, wrapping around your thoughts before you even rise. 1, 2, 3 times a day it calls you. Matins, mass, vespers. Not that you attend every prayer. You're a peasant after all. You have fields to work, mouths to feed, blisters that don't wait for blessing. But still, the bell is always there, like breath, like time. It marks the hours. It marks your life. The church is the heart of the village. Stone-built, square-towered, its narrow windows stained by centuries. Its crooked cross always tilting slightly west as if bowing under the weight of faith. It's cold in winter, dim in summer. The walls are painted, faded saints, dragons' miracles, though you don't always know who's who. One carries keys, another a sword. You try to remember their names, but the stories swirl together like a pot of stew left too long to boil. And yet, you believe. Not because you've read the Bible. You haven't. You can't even read. But because faith is like air. Everyone breathes it. Your mother crossed herself before lighting the hearth. Your father whispered prayers before turning the soil. Even the cowherd, half-mad toothless, always mumbling. Even he bows before a thunderstorm. Heaven is real. Hell even more so. And purgatory. That's the one that truly haunts you. A waiting room of fire. A hallway of smoke and groaning. Where even the good must burn for a while. It's said your sins smolder there, one by one, like damp straw in a slow fire. Unless, of course, someone pays to shorten your stay, which brings you to indulgences. The priest talks about them sometimes. A coin, a prayer, a special mass. Each one chips away at your time in the flames. The Lord buys them often. You've seen the scrolls, golden seals, Latin words holier than you'll ever be. You try not to envy. You try not to wonder if coins weigh more than kindness. Your priest is kind mostly. He smells of onions and beeswax. He preaches in Latin but explains in English. You understand the gist. Be humble. Be kind. Fear God. Pay your tithes. Ah, yes, tithes. 1/10 of everything. Grain, eggs, even your honey. And not the scraps, not the cracked eggs or sour loaves. The best 10th. It's all hauled to the tithe barn each year, stacked high under the reeve's watchful eye. You grumble, you curse under your breath, but you pay, because that's the price of salvation. Or so you hope. Still, there is comfort in the rhythm of it all. Sunday Mass, even when your feet are wet. Candlelit processions through muddy lanes. Ash on your forehead in February. Holly at the altar in December. You kneel until your knees ache. You cross yourself until your shoulder stings. And you whisper, Amen, like it might carry your soul just a little higher. And maybe it will. The church teaches that this world is a trial. A ladder to climb or a pit to fall through. You carry that weight with every breath. Every birth is a blessing, every death a warning. You name your children after saints, just in case it helps, and you've seen miracles, or things that feel like miracles. Old Agnes, who lost her sight after a storm, said she could see again after praying to Saint Lucy. And the cow, the one that stopped giving milk for weeks, started again after the priest sprinkled holy water on her stool. Coincidence maybe, but who are you to doubt such things? You know fear too. There's a corner of the church wall, blackened, damp, strange smelling. They say a witch stood there once and left her shadow behind. No one touches it, not even the priest. You sweep around it, always. Witches, demons, omens. They are real to you, real in the bones. If your child falls ill, you light a candle. If a chicken dies suddenly, you bury a cross in the field. If you dream of teeth falling out, you sleep with garlic by your bed. Just in case. Historians argue were peasants devout or just superstitious. But that question misses the truth. Faith isn't always logical. It's lived, it's felt, it's shared in whispers and bread and candlelight and fear. Your village celebrates feast days like lifelines. St. Michael's with apples and roast goose. St. John's with bonfires and dancing. Christmas with evergreen boughs and honey cakes. Easter with lilies and lamb. The priest blesses it all, even your laughter, even your drunkenness, even your foolishness. And during Lent, you fast. No meat, no eggs, just fish, grains, and quiet. You complain, of course, but part of you likes it. The stillness, the discipline, the way hunger feels almost holy. There's a wooden crucifix above the altar. You stare at it often, not just during sermons. Sometimes you slip into the church when no one's there. Sit on the bench, breathe in the chill, and think about sin, about love, about how much your back hurts. Most days, you wonder if Christ knew that pain too. The church records everything: births, deaths, marriages, sins. Your life scratched in ink by hands more educated than yours. But you don't need parchment to understand death. You've buried friends, wrapped in linen lowered into earth. The priest chants, the bell tolls, the ground closes, and you return to your fields, because that's life. And yet the church stands, through fires, through storms, through plague and famine. It leans a little more each year. But it never falls. You pass it every day. You nod to the saints, kiss your fingers, whisper a hope that maybe, just maybe, this hard life leads to a better one. You don't really own your tools, not truly. Not in the way someone owns a fine horse or a carved chest. The scythe you use, it was passed down from your father. Its wooden handle worn smooth by hands tougher than yours, calloused, cracked, careful. The iron head, it's been reshaped and resharpened so many times it barely remembers the shape it once had. The plow you work with isn't yours either. It's shared. A great groaning beast of wood and iron dragged behind a pair of oxen that technically belong to the Lord. But during harvest, when sweat drips down your back and dust coats your tongue, they feel more like part of your soul than your limbs do. Tools are precious, like fire, like time. You mend what you can, you must. You patch your shoes with pig gut. Stitch your cloak with old yarn, the kind your mother once used to fix your childhood mittens. When the thatch leaks, you stuff it with moss. When your hose snaps, you bind it with cord until it's more string than wood. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is thrown away. Even a bent nail, you straighten it with a stone and drop it in a jar just in case it's needed later. But tools aren't just things you hold. They shape the rhythm of your day. The wooden rake, heavy splintered scrapes behind you in the hayfield. The sickle whispers as it slices grain, soft and clean, like cutting wind. And the flail, two sticks linked by cracked leather beats the wheat into obedience on the threshing floor. Its thud becomes your lullaby. 1, 2, 1, 2, again, and again. But when something breaks during harvest, your stomach twists, because there's no shop you can walk to, no shelf lined with spares, not for men like you. So you go to the blacksmith. The blacksmith. He's a magician. His forge glows like a dragon's mouth. Sparks leap like fireflies. You hand him your cracked blade with both reverence and desperation. He takes it, doesn't say much, just nods and begins. He hammers it red hot and screaming, flattens the metal against the anvil, then plunges it into a barrel. Steam rises like ghosts. The air smells of blood and burning iron. He rarely speaks, maybe a grunt, a hum, but he always fixes what he can. And sometimes he slips you an extra rivet, a nail, a sliver of generosity that sticks longer than any metal he's ever forged. Historians still debate, was the village blacksmith powerful or merely a servant to the manor? But to you, during plough season, he matters more than the priest. Then there's the carpenter. He carved your stool, your door frame, the spoon you hold at every meal, even your child's little wooden doll shaped like a pig, though one ear is bigger than the other. His tools are rarer still, a curved plane, a hand drill, a gouge sharp enough to cut butter. You watched him once, shaping a yoke for the oxen. His hands slow. Sure, each chip of wood curling away like a feather. There was beauty in the way he worked, quiet beauty, like prayer without words. But not all labor comes from crafted tools. Your hands are tools too. Your shoulders, your thighs, your spine. The older you grow, the more your body rusts. Like an old sickle left out in the rain. Your knees ache, fingers crack, teeth loosen. You don't speak of it. You just tie another cloth around your wrist and keep going. Every season wounds you in its own way. Spring strains your back with digging. Summer burns your neck, blisters your hands. Autumn steals your footing in the mud. Winter splits your lips and numbs your toes. There's no doctor here, only midwives, herb wives, and a traveling bone setter who smells of onions and stale beer. You remember the time your cousin fell from a tree, snapped his leg clean. The bone setter set it by hand. 2 men held him down. He screamed, passed out, but he walked again. Mostly, when illness comes, you turn to herbs, yarrow for cuts, elderberry for fever, poppy seeds when pain claws too deep, garlic, goose fat, holy water. Your neighbor swears by goose fat on the knees. You tried it once. It helped, maybe. You've tried holy water too, though it mostly just made your shoes wet. And your tools, they're never clean. How could they be? Mud clings to the handles. Sweat soaks the grips. Blood marks the blade. Manure finds its way into everything. You rinse them in the stream. You wipe them on your tunic. There's no soap, just trust. And still, you hope they'll last. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they snap in your hand when you need them most. And when winter whispers in, you tuck your tools away. In a shed by your hut. Dark, cold, creaking with wind. Rust begins its quiet work. Mice gnaw the handles. You check on them. Carefully, lovingly. Like checking on sleeping dogs. They are your lifeline, your livelihood. Sometimes in dreams you see yourself wielding better ones. A plow with wheels, a spade with a steel tip, a sickle that slices smooth with every pull. But dreams cost more than metal. And so you patch, you tie, you carry on. Because tools are just extensions of effort. And effort is all you've ever truly owned. You wake before the rooster, not because you're eager, but because sleep no longer clings the way it used to. The straw beneath you itches. The cold clutches at your toes, even under the blanket. And somewhere out beyond the thin wooden walls, a cow bellows. It's time for milking. So with a sigh and a grunt, you swing your legs down, scratch absent-mindedly at the flea bites on your calves, and begin another day in a life you never truly chose, but one you've learned to endure. One heartbeat, one harvest, one cold morning at a time. Morning routines are simple, but relentless. You pull on your tunic, scratchy wool damp at the edges where the walls weep at night. You step outside into a world still hushed. The air is heavy with the smell of damp earth and dung. The sun hasn't yet lifted above the hedgerows, but the sky, soft and pale, promises it will. Eventually, you ladle water from the barrel, splash it onto your face, sharp and cold enough to chase the last threads of sleep from your eyes. Then you walk barefoot to the small pen beside your home. Time to check the animals. Time to start the day that never really ends. The chickens come first. Their clucks are soft annoyed. They shuffle away from your shadow as you scatter feed. One is missing. Again. Fox perhaps. Or maybe hunger. You don't have time to wonder. You simply note the absence, another quiet loss, and move on. The pig is next, snorting, stubborn, rooting at the frozen earth as if gold were buried beneath it. You toss it the scraps left from last night's pottage, turnip peels, barley husks, a heel of stale bread. It chomps with wide eyes, blank and somehow grateful. Then comes the cow. You crouch beside her, one hand steadying the wooden bucket, the other tugging in rhythm. Warmth seeps into your fingers. Steam rises in little puffs from the milk. A flick of her tail smacks your cheek. You don't flinch, not anymore. You've learned to take it all. The quiet, the cold, the smacks. As part of the rhythm, part of the song of survival. Breakfast is eaten standing. You don't sit unless you have to. A crust of barley bread, sometimes dipped in the fresh milk. Still warm, still sweet. If you're lucky, there's a smear of lard or a sliver of cheese scraped from the edge of a moldy round. Your children, if they're old enough, are already out doing their share. Fetching wood, scaring off crows, minding the small fire. If they're still little, they sleep in the corner, curled like puppies under a patched and smoky blanket. Your spouse tends the hearth, coaxing flames from the ash and coals of last night's fire. It takes skill to keep flame alive without wasting precious wood. You stand near, let the warmth touch your knees, just for a moment, just enough. Then you head back out, because the day doesn't wait. With your hoe slung over your shoulder, you trudge to the field. The sky is brighter now, and so is the village. Other figures shuffle from doorways, rubbing their eyes, muttering greetings in hoarse voices. Everyone moves with the same wary posture, as though the earth might shift under their feet at any moment. You nod to them. They nod back. Not much is said. Your field, of course, is not truly yours. We've said that already, but you know it better than you know your own hands. You know where it dips and rises, where the rocks hide beneath the soil, where frost clings longest and where the sun first touches the dirt each morning. You know the weeds that come back no matter how often you pull them, the spot where mushrooms grow, the corner that floods each spring. You tend it like it's your child, like it's your story. You break the clods with your hoe. You sow seeds in straight lines, your fingers already raw from the cold. You pluck weeds with cracked knuckles. You mutter to the crows circling above warnings, bargains, or curses, depending on your mood. Sometimes you hum, sometimes you pray, sometimes you just breathe, quiet and steady, as the earth pushes back beneath your hands. By midday, your tunic clings to your back with sweat. The sun is high but soft, rarely cruel but never kind. You take a short break, lean against a tree or a stone. Eat what's left from breakfast, maybe another crust of bread, maybe a bit of onion. You drink water from the stream. There's no ale yet, no wine. That comes later if it comes at all. Then you return, back to it. The rhythm is always the same. Hoe, turn, pull, pat. Your body becomes the tool. You stop thinking about the aching. It's just a part of you now. You only notice when something changes, when a knee swells, when a finger won't bend, when the red becomes blood instead of just dirt. You don't stop. You can't. And yet there's peace in it. A strange quiet kind. The repetition, the resistance of the soil, the way each hour slips into the next. Like ripples on a still pond. By dusk you are emptied. Not simply tired, but scraped out. Like a bowl licked clean. Your feet drag in the mud. Your hands dangle limp at your sides. Even your eyelids are heavy. The chickens are already roosting. The pig snores softly. The cow lifts her head just long enough to murmur a low, sleepy sound. And your home, crooked and small, glows like a lantern in the gathering dark. Inside it smells of smoke, of herbs, of human breath and lived in air. Supper is simple, more bread, maybe soup. If it's been a good week, dried fish, salted pork, or a few bits of carrot, boiled soft and grey. You chew slowly, savouring each bite, even if it has no flavour. You speak little, not from coldness, just from quiet, the kind that comes after too much sun, too many thoughts, and not enough dreams. You may talk briefly about a neighbour who hurt his hand, a stranger who passed by the village road, or the coming harvest festival. But even those words fall gently into silence, like coals falling into ash. Historians still debate whether peasants like you lived in constant misery or found joy in their simplicity. The truth, both. You suffer, yes. You bend, you break. You ache in places no prayer can reach, but you also laugh. You sing while planting. You hold your children and kiss their dirt-smudged faces. And you dream of things not real, of things never yours. Because dreaming costs nothing. When the light fades, so do you. There are no clocks, just instinct, just darkness, and the hush of the world slowing down. You crawl onto your straw mattress, pull the wool over your shoulders, and let your bones soften against the ache. You may speak one last prayer, a whisper, a thank you, a wish, and then you lie still, eyes closed, one day gone, another waiting. And so the cycle turns. It's not just your field you tend, not really. It's the whole village that holds your rhythm, that carries your footsteps, that shapes the days of your life. Your world is small, tiny even, a scattering of wooden huts, thatched roofs bent like tired shoulders, dirt paths curling between hearth and haystack, like veins through an old hand. Chickens dart freely, dogs doze beneath the sun, children chase dust in the afternoon, and from the rooftops thin curls of smoke drift slowly into the sky, spiraling like thoughts half-formed, like stories whispered on a breeze. Everywhere around you, the soft shuffle of bare feet, the quiet murmur of chores, the warm, steady scent of wood smoke, damp wool and manure. You know every face here. You have to. There is no choosing, no privacy, no vanishing for a weekend away. You see them all, at the bakehouse, at the well, at the little church whose bells echo like a heartbeat through the fields. There is no such thing as anonymity. If you want quiet, you walk to the edge of the woods. Let your eyes rest on the trees. But even there, even in the hush between branches, someone will likely wave to you. Someone will probably join you. That's the truth of it. Your neighbors are part of your survival. And also part of your burden. You share tools, you share stories, you share meals, misfortunes, and even moments of joy. If someone's roof caves in after a storm, you help thatch it again. If someone's ox dies in the heat of summer, the village gathers, talks of lending another or pulling together with rope and sweat. And if a baby is born, the women gather with herbs and hushed voices. Later, even if there's barely enough flour to go around, there is bread, there is laughter, there are blessings whispered in the dark. But still, not everything is gentle. Not all is harmony. There are feuds. Of course there are. Your uncle still won't speak to the cobbler who borrowed his best shovel 2 summers ago and returned it split at the handle. There's gossip too. Soft as moth wings, but twice as fast. Who's sneaking off into the woods with whom? Whose ale tastes like ditch water? Whose child doesn't quite look like their husband? It's part of the balance, part of the living. Like weeds among the grain, not wanted, but somehow expected. The village elder tries to keep the peace. He's a man with more beard than teeth, but everyone listens when he speaks. He remembers everything. Births, debts, quarrels, even stolen chickens from 3 winters past. When there's trouble, he gathers the men in the clearing, listens, nods, then mutters something slow and wise, and somehow things settle, for a while. But still, it's the church that binds you most. The chapel, small and simple, stands at the edge of the village, its stone walls cool even in summer. Every Sunday the bells ring, not loud but clear. You scrub your face, pull on your better tunic, still patched but cleaner than most days, and you walk slowly, reverently, as if the walk itself is a kind of prayer. Inside it smells of wax and dust. Light spills in from tall, narrow windows, coloring the stone with soft stripes of red and blue. The priest reads from a book, words in Latin you don't understand. But you listen, because it's not about the words, it's about the rhythm. The way his voice rises, then falls like waves lapping a quiet shore. You kneel when he gestures. You murmur the prayers you learned as a child. And somehow you feel part of something larger, something ancient, something just beyond reach. Sometimes he speaks of fire and brimstone, of judgment, of sin, of hell. You let that pass like wind through dry leaves. What you hold on to are the softer words, the ones about grace, about forgiveness, about how even a poor man's soul shines just as brightly in heaven's gaze. After Mass, No one rushes home. The villagers linger outside, swapping news in low voices. Who's come down with a fever? Which field flooded after last night's rain? Whether the king has raised taxes again. You don't care much for kings. They live in castles. They eat swans. They never lift slop buckets in the rain. And yet their choices shape your life, even from far away. Historians still debate whether peasants understood royal politics. Perhaps not in detail, but you understand the cost. You feel it when taxes rise, when new rules appear, when labor becomes heavier and pigs fewer. You understand enough. There are no secrets in the village, not really. If you sneeze at dawn, someone will mention it by supper. If your cow limps, 3 neighbors will have advice before breakfast. And if your daughter smiles too long at the Reeve's sun, well, rumor spreads faster than spring wind. And yet there's something warm in it all, in the closeness, the knowing, the fact that every fire you pass at night holds someone who knows your name. On feast days, the village comes alive. You gather in the clearing. There's music, a fiddler playing on a worn string, dancing, laughter, maybe even roasted goose if someone's been saving. You drink ale that's weak but still sweet on the tongue. You eat until the pots are scraped clean. And for a while, a beautiful while, the burdens fall away. Children chase each other in spinning games. Old women sing verses older than memory. Someone burns something in a corner. Everyone laughs until their ribs ache. Even the grumpy cobbler taps his foot to the rhythm. But when a villager dies, the mood changes, becomes hushed, sacred. You wear black or the darkest tunic you own. You walk in procession along the same path you've walked 100 times, only this time with heads bowed. The priest murmurs in Latin, the widow weeps, a baby cries in someone's arms, and when the dirt falls on the coffin, it sounds like a drum beat, soft, steady final. Then life resumes, slowly, gently, because grief too is part of the rhythm, just as much as birth, or toil, or prayer. There's comfort in knowing everyone shares it, that everyone wakes in the same cold, walks through the same mud, breathes the same firelit air at day's end. You don't always love them, your neighbors, but you'd be lost without them. Because in this tiny world of bark and straw, of smoke and chickens, of gossip and grace, you belong. Not because you chose it, but because it holds you. And even when the days are long and the work is heavy and the dreams feel too far away, there is always the shared firelight, the shared bread, the shared sky. You live this life together, and that more than anything is what carries you. There are seasons in your body, just as there are in the soil. Spring comes to your joints when the sun begins to warm the earth again, when the smell of thawed mud clings to everything clothes, hands, boots, even memory, and with it, hope seeps in. You stretch, you prepare, you believe perhaps foolishly that this year will be easier than the last, but it never is, because time doesn't stop, not for you, not for anyone, and certainly not for peasants. You were once young, barefoot, fast, giggling behind haystacks, racing the wind, laughing until your ribs ached. Now your knees crack when you bend, your breath shortens, even on the gentlest hill, and the furrows on your brow have deepened like plow lines carved into old earth. Your children grow fast, faster than your rest. Your eldest is tall now, strong enough to swing a hoe beside you. Your youngest still sleeps curled at your side, a bundle of warmth, tiny snores against your ribs. You try to teach them everything, how to hold a scythe without slicing a foot, how to spot a spoiled egg, how to tell when a certain cloud means rain and when it's just drama. You hear your own parents in your voice now, saying things you once swore you'd never repeat. Hard work keeps the belly full. Don't cry, use your hands. God helps those who help themselves. The years roll by, like barrels down a hill. You don't mark time with calendars, you mark it in harvests. In the year the cow calved late, in the time of the great frost, when the pond froze solid enough to walk across. In the long summer of bees, when honey was so sweet you dreamed of it for months. And through it all, you endure. There's something powerful in that. Even when everything aches, even when the body protests and the soul grows quiet, you bury friends. A neighbor collapses mid-hoe. An uncle doesn't wake. The midwife lights candles for a stillborn child. But the sun keeps rising. The wheat still grows. And the chores never wait. Sometimes when the moon is full and your belly is warm, you sit just outside your hut and look up. The stars shimmer like glass beads spilled across a black velvet cloth, and you wonder what lies beyond, not just beyond the stars, but beyond this life. The priest says heaven waits. You're not sure, you hope, but mostly you try to do right by the now. You patch a neighbor's roof. You share salt when another's stock runs low. You tell stories to the children, tales your grandmother once whispered, stories of witches that live in root cellars, of saints who turned rivers into wine, of a time when the land, they say, was kinder. Your hands are leather now. Your back curves like a bow. Your vision dims, especially by candlelight. But your heart, it's steady. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers felt a true sense of self or were simply tied to their role in the commune. But you know better. You are more than a tool, more than a worker. You are someone who remembers, someone who dreams. You've loved, haven't you? Not with poetry or lute songs, but in your own quiet way, with small gifts, a carved whistle, a single egg saved from the market, a glance across a wide golden field, a hand held beneath a moonlit sky. Maybe that's all love ever needs. You've also known fear, the fear of illness, of war, of famine, the hollow ache of losing a child to fever, and finding yourself with no more words to pray, but still you carried on. Because you had to, because someone depended on you, because bread still needed baking, wood needed chopping, goats needed chasing. You age quietly, without ceremony. No one throws parties for 40-year-olds here. You just keep going. The birthdays blend, the seasons blur, and one day your child gently corrects your steps in the field. Another day they lead the ox while you rest your legs on an old tree stump. But still you find beauty in the way morning light strikes dew on barley, in the echo of laughter near the bakehouse, in the smell of bread fresh from the oven after a long day's work. Even in sorrow, there's softness. When someone dies, a loaf is left quietly by their door. A candle burns through the night, and hands, rough, steady hands, reach out in comfort, quiet, solid, reassuring. And when you find yourself alone in the shed, mending a broken rake beneath the rafters, you hum. Just a few notes, soft, tired, but they rise like a small, steady prayer. Your life isn't written in books. It's not carved into stone. It won't be painted in chapels or sung in royal courts. But it is real. It is full. And in its quiet, unremarkable, beautiful way, it matters. The village is not only a place of toil. It is a world of stories. A soft-spoken world passed not through ink or parchment, but from lips to ears like treasured heirlooms. These stories drift through the air like dandelion seeds catching on the wind, carried across gardens, fields and doorways before settling gently into the corners of your memory. At night, when the sun has sunk behind the trees and the fire has dimmed to quiet embers, you gather close, neighbors draw near, mothers hush their children, old men clear their throats, and all around you the soft hush of evening settles in like a blanket. Voices lower, chairs creak, the scent of smoke and ash mingles with the rustle of straw and the sighs of tired bodies. And that's when the stories begin. Not loudly, not all at once, but slowly like rain on a roof. Soft, steady and sure. You share tales of saints and sinners, of brave heroes long dead and spirits that still wander. Stories curl through the smoke like silk. They wrap the circle in warmth and wonder, drawing each listener inward until even the most skeptical hearts lean closer. Some tales are simple, sweet, like the one about the blacksmith's stubborn horse, how it escaped the stable and outwitted its master by hiding in a haystack for 3 whole days. Even now that story draws a laugh. Other tales are darker, whispers carried from the edge of the forest, stories of the green man who watches the trees, who punishes those who break branches for fun or fell saplings without thanks. You don't know if he's real, but you still bow your head when you pass an ancient oak. Then there are the stories you never grow tired of, the ones about witches. Old women with crooked fingers, eyes like moonlight, voices that hum with secrets. Everyone knows someone who once lived on the edge of the village, a woman who brewed strange teas, who gathered herbs by moonlight, who kept cats and never married. No one says it outright, but everyone wonders, could she curse a well, bless a crop, turn into a bird, And even if you don't believe it all, not truly, still, you feel a delicious shiver down your spine whenever someone begins. They say she once turned a man into a goat. Where did these stories come from? You sometimes wonder, are they just made up words? Idle thoughts spun by idle minds? Or do they hold truths deeper than the soil beneath your toes? Historians still debate it. They write about folklore. They argue whether the tales shaped peasant beliefs or simply entertained them. But you know the answer. Because for you, these stories aren't decoration. They're lifelines. They take your ordinary world, the aches, the mud, the tiredness, and they lace it with magic. They make the long winters less cold. They soften the edges of grief. They add color to days that might otherwise feel gray. In the stories, even the poorest can be chosen. Even the smallest can be brave. Even the forgotten can be remembered. You remember the tale of the Lady of the Lake, how she rose from the waters with silver eyes and placed a sword into a king's hand. A sword that could command the rivers, summon storms, silence armies. You don't know where that story came from. An old traveler told it once, sitting cross-legged by your hearth. His voice was low, his cloak was patched, but the way he told it, the way the candlelight danced on his face, you could almost see her. The lady in the water, her hand rising through the mist. Now you tell that tale to your children, their eyes wide, their mouths slightly open. They ask you, did it really happen? And you smile, because magic does exist, just not always in the way they think. Magic lives in the way the stars blink down silent and unblinking, in the way the frost paints windows, in the way seeds split open under warm soil, in the warmth of a fire after a storm, in a story whispered gently when the world feels too big. In that way, yes, magic is real. And stories are more than entertainment. They are survival. They pass on wisdom. They warn. They teach. They comfort. And most of all, they connect. They tie each villager to another like threads in a vast and invisible cloth. Because when someone says, let me tell you what happened when the moon turned red, everyone listens, even the baker, even the children, even the tired reeve leaning on his cane. The stories are yours, and they are everyone's. You watch your children learn them, one by one. They begin to retell them with tiny changes. The blacksmith's horse becomes a goat. The lady of the lake gives her sword to a girl. The green man becomes kind unless insulted. You don't mind. In fact, you encourage it. Because stories, like people, must grow. They must stretch and bend and become something new. Or else they fade. You have stories of your own too. You tell them when the night is quiet and the chores are done. You speak of the time the great flood came, how the chickens floated in barrels, how neighbors tied rope between houses to cross safely. You speak of the stranger, the one who arrived with strange tools and an accent no one recognized. He fixed a cartwheel no one else could fix, and left before sunrise. You remember the feast, the one where the reeve so full of pride spilled a cup of wine onto the Lord's boots. How everyone froze until the Lord laughed. And oh, how you laughed too. Even now that story makes you chuckle. You tell those stories not to brag, but to remember, to remind your children and yourself that life, even when hard, is filled with tiny miracles. A laugh, a helping hand, a storm survived, a meal shared, and so the stories go on, night after night around the fire. They echo like lullabies, a soft hum against the dark. They are the heartbeat of the village, the pulse that keeps its people warm. Because even in a world of mud and labor and worry, stories are a light, a flicker that never goes out. You don't need books, or parchment, or libraries. You carry your library in your head, and when your bones are too tired to rise from the stool, when your hands are worn smooth with work, you can still speak, still remember, still share. That is power. That is magic. And one day when you are gone and your chair sits empty by the fire, someone else will sit there, and they will say, let me tell you a story I once heard about a woman who whispered stories like wind through the trees, who believed in stars and magic and the green man in the woods. And so your voice will echo, soft, steady, enduring, because the village may be built of straw and wood, but its soul is built of stories, and that perhaps is why they last. You sometimes wonder about the world beyond the village, beyond the patchwork fields stitched together like an old quilt. beyond the tangled woods where birds call and shadows linger, beyond the stone walls and the dirt roads worn smooth by generations of footsteps, what lies past all that? There are castles you hear, tall and proud, with towers that reach for the sky like stone trees grown by man. Inside, they say lords and ladies wear silks that shimmer like water and jewels that sparkle even in candlelight. They dine on roast swan. They drink from goblets of silver. They speak in voices that ripple through the land, sending their decisions down the chain until they land softly at your feet. You don't know much about those places, only what travelers say when they stop at the village inn, voices hushed, eyes bright, as though the very walls might listen. Sometimes late at night when the sky is full of stars, you imagine yourself walking through those grand halls. Marble floors cool beneath your feet, tapestries taller than a house, woven with dragons and knights and kings, servants bustling like bees in a hive, and chandeliers dripping with light. But mostly, you know the castle is not for you. You are not made of velvet and gold. You are made of earth and toil, of sunburned shoulders and calloused palms. You belong to the fields, to the rhythm of the plough and the hum of the scythe, to the warmth of the hearth, the ache of labor, and the brief rest at dusk. Yours is a world shaped by the seasons, their push, their pull, their patient cycle of birth and death, growth and rest. And yet even the lords, the ones behind high walls, they depend on you. Your hands feed them, your sheep clothe them, your silver, small as it may be, builds their chapels and fortresses. It's a delicate dance, this life. Feudal, they call it. A word you never say, but live every day. Sometimes the dance falters. Sometimes it turns dangerous. You've seen it. Men in armor marching through the village, swords glinting, horses restless, whispers swirling like wind through barley, talk of uprisings, of rebellion, of change. You don't know what to believe, but you wonder, what does it feel like to have power to make the world bend to your voice? Historians still argue, did peasants dream of rising, or did they simply accept their lot as part of God's design? Maybe it was both. Maybe there were nights long and quiet, when someone lay awake staring at the thatched ceiling, their heart beating like a drum. And in that moment they imagined a different life, a life where the land belonged to them, where their children went to bed full, where their voice, however soft, mattered. But morning always comes, and with it chores. You rise before the rooster, shoulders aching, feet heavy with sleep. You step out into the chill, the world still wrapped in dew. The sun creeps up over rye and barley, spilling gold across the earth. Another day begins. The cycle continues. This life is not easy. It is not gentle, but it is yours. And within its hard lines, there are small graces. A child's laughter echoing down the lane. The scent of bread fresh from the oven. The warm flicker of a candle fighting off the dark. A kind word. A helping hand. A moment of rest beneath a tree, the sun on your face. You gather these like wildflowers. Small delicate moments. Precious in their fleetingness. The feudal world may be built of weight and duty, but you find softness where you can. As the sun begins to set, you pause at the edge of a field. The sky blazes pink and gold, a quiet blessing from above. The village hushes. The clamor of the day fades to whispers. A baby cries. A door creaks. Leaves rustle like old paper. You feel the hours press gently on your eyelids. The weight of the day not heavy, but full. Full of things done, of things endured, of life in all its quiet forms. There's comfort in the rhythm, the steady breath of earth and sky, the promise of light after every night. You remember the warmth of the hearth, the way the flames dance and pop, the stories told in low voices, shadows flickering on faces tired but content. You remember the hands, worn but strong, carrying children, mending cloaks, baking bread, holding on. There is quiet strength here, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that endures. And that strength lives in every heart that beats through hardship, in every eye that still looks up at the stars, in every soul that finds a reason to smile, even when the work is long and the road is rough. These are the things that linger when the noise fades, when the fire dies down, the softness within the struggle, the laugh shared after long hours, the neighbor who leaves food at your door, the child who runs to you arms wide, the bird that sings just as the sun rises. As your mind drifts, you imagine the fields under moonlight, pale silver stretching across the grain, the wind moving gently like a lullaby whispered by the earth. You feel calm seep into your bones, the toils of the day easing from your limbs, a balm against the weariness, a quiet reminder that rest is part of the journey too. You've walked the same paths your parents walked, you've shared their burdens, laughed their laughter, felt their joys and fears, and now it's time to let go, to let sleep gather you close, like a blanket, like a mother's hum, like a lullaby sung by the stars. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, let the world soften, let the sharp edges blur, let the day dissolve into peace. May your dreams be kind, may your rest be deep, may you feel held by the land you live upon, by the stories you carry, by the quiet, enduring strength. That is your inheritance. When morning comes, may you rise with gentleness, and may you carry this calm, a little piece of stillness into the noise of the day. For now, sleep, you've earned it. The field is quiet, the sky is soft, and the world keeps breathing beside you. Good night. End of script. Sweet dreams.